For the last several months, there's been one consistent thing going on between the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, which is competition and the fact that Sony isn't outselling the Xbox console like it did last generation. In fact, Xbox has truly closed the gap when it comes to units sold. There's a lot of new data being talked about, so let's get into what's being reported and see how close the sales race is between Xbox and Sony. This might surprise a lot of you, so let's get into this. Hey, what's up everyone? Thanks for stopping by and checking out the video. Remember to hit that subscribe button and that like button. The support is greatly appreciated. And if you want to be notified on future content, hit that small little bell icon. And if you want to go that extra mile to support the channel, hit that join button. All right, enough of that. Let's get right into these comparisons between the next generation consoles of the Xbox Series X and S and the PlayStation 5 Standard and Digital Edition. We have to remember, both companies have two versions of the same console. The Xbox obviously has the Series S and the X consoles, which one is cheaper with a little less power, but it has only digital components, while the X is more of the powerhouse. Then Sony has the $500 console Standard, which has a disc, and the PS5 Digital only PS5 for $400 that's only for digital users. I wanted to point this out because some people think having two versions of a console is the only reason Xbox is catching up in sales, when in reality, both companies have two versions of this next generation consoles. With that out of the way, let's get right into these sales numbers because there's a lot to talk about. But first, I want you to see where these sales numbers are coming from, and here's what the article has to say about it. The VG Chart Sales Comparison series of articles are updated monthly, and each one focuses on a different sales comparison using our estimated video game hardware figures. The charts include comparisons between the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series XS, and the Nintendo Switch, as well as other older platforms. There are articles based on our worldwide estimates as well as the US, Europe, and Japan. This monthly series compares the aligned US sales of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S. The PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series XS both launched on November 2020. The Xbox Series XS launched in the US on November 10th and the PlayStation 5 on November 12th. Okay, so we can see both consoles have been out for about 16 months, which is a little over a year. This isn't a year and a half or 2 years, it's 16 months. This time frame gives us a lot of data to work with, so we can see certain trends happening in the console space, but also gives us reference to sales numbers across the board. And when we look at the sales numbers for the first year or so of the consoles, it was obvious that Sony was selling more consoles because they had way more consoles out there than Xbox. That's something that was being reported because Sony was developing and manufacturing their consoles months before Microsoft was able to start production on their Xbox Series X. This was due to Xbox waiting for certain next generation features like RDNA 2 on their consoles. Yet over the last several months, Xbox has seemingly closed the gap when it comes to console sales between the two platforms, which is being reported right here. PS5 versus Xbox Series XS worldwide. Gap change in last month, 128,000 Xbox Series X. Gap change over last 12 months, 1,716. Total lead, 545,000 PS5. PlayStation 5 total sales, 6,766,000. Xbox Series XS total sales, 6,221,000. February 2022 is the 16th month of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series XS has been available for. In the last month, the gap grew in favor of the Xbox Series X and S when compared to the aligned launch of the PlayStation 5 by 128,000 units. In the last 12 months, the Xbox Series X and S has outsold PlayStation 5 by 1,716 units. The PlayStation 5 is currently ahead by 545,000 units. Okay, so we know that Sony has about a 500,000 unit lead when it comes to console sales, which is pretty good for them because they've sold extremely well the last 16 months, yet over the last 3 to 4 months, Xbox has considerably closed the gap between the two systems. I mean, let's just look at these charts, which I'm showing on screen right now. As you can see, there was a point where Sony had over a 1 million unit gap lead over Xbox when it came to their units sold. Now, I know a lot of people would think this is a lot of units, which It is. But if we remember last generation, the gap between the Xbox One and the PS4 was so big, it was almost embarrassing for Microsoft to even report numbers, and to some extent, they stopped reporting numbers and only talked about active users on their platform. We know that the gap between the two was over double in sales, and of course it was. The PlayStation 4 was a more powerful console and had a better price point from the beginning, so everything worked in their favor over Microsoft. Yet this generation is far different. We're seeing true competition from Xbox, and it's starting to show just how dominant they're becoming when you look at the console sales. And it's also showing that the competition this time around isn't going to be a landslide win for Sony and their PlayStation platform, because no matter what anyone says, Xbox has the price and the power on their side this time around. Not to mention Game Pass, which we've talked about extensively, and we know it's one of the best features that Xbox has brought out in many years. And the funny thing about this is that I've heard people say Sony has millions upon millions of units lead over Xbox in America and all over the world. And while the worldwide sales are probably true, since Sony does dominate a lot of regions that Xbox just isn't a part of, it's North America that Xbox truly does have a massive following. And it's why this gap between the two companies is so small now. A 500K gap is pretty impressive when you look at how much Sony dominated last generation. So it's awesome to see this type of competition. And in fact, let's get into what else is being reported by the statistics. The PlayStation 5 has sold 6.77 million units in the US in 16 months, while the Xbox Series X has sold 6.2 million units. The PlayStation 5 has a 52.1% market share compared to 47.9% of the Xbox Series X market share. The PlayStation 5 is currently 452,000 units behind the PlayStation 4 in the US when you align launches, and the Xbox Series XS is behind the Xbox One by 356,000 units. And this is one of the most interesting aspects of this whole thing to me. Most people don't realize that the Xbox Series X and S and the PlayStation 5 are selling out like crazy. Only recently has Microsoft been able to fill in some of those orders. Most of the people I know are still hunting for an Xbox Series X console. They've been hunting for over a year. Same with the people that want a PlayStation 5. It's because they can't make enough of these consoles, and the demand for them is through the roof. So when we see that the PlayStation 5 is almost 500,000 units behind the PlayStation 4 in the US, it's a telling number. Even the Series X is behind the Xbox One by almost 400,000 units. And this is after the Xbox One sold extremely poorly according to multiple people. So if the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X are behind those units, yet they're selling out like crazy, that's why this brings up a pretty big idea, which is this console generation is going to last a very long time. Because while Xbox is closing the gap between Sony, it's obvious they aren't making enough consoles to meet demand. So goes with Sony's PlayStation 5. I have a feeling it will take several years for both Sony and Microsoft to finally meet the demand that these consoles are having. And because of this, we'll see the gap between Xbox and Sony fluctuate up and down. Some months Microsoft will dominate because they have more units out there on store shelves. Other months Sony will dominate because they got more units out to the people. To me, this is a far different generation, because it was almost like catching a unicorn when we heard Xbox won a sales month. Yet now it's far more common to see both companies take turns outselling each other. But for the last 4 months or so, Xbox has almost shut the gap between the two consoles and has pretty much done this without a big first-party game dropping into Game Pass, minus Halo Infinite, which dropped all the way back in December of 2021. While Sony has had Horizon Forbidden West along with other games like Gran Turismo coming and Ghostwire Tokyo. Maybe, just maybe, those games aren't the big blockbuster sellers they thought they were going to be. Or it could be a case of Sony not having enough units out in the wild for them to sell what they wanted. Either way, this generation is going to be a pretty big race, and it's going to be a way more competitive race. And we're going to be seeing these two big gaming monsters fighting back and forth for several years. I have a feeling that the days of Sony dominating like crazy during the PS4 era are over. It's going to be far closer than people think, and I'm glad it's going to be that way. We want to see both companies thriving and making the most consoles they can. It shows gaming is in a good place, and it drives competition to its highest form, which is only good for us gamers because we benefit when two big billion-dollar companies go head-to-head. But enough of what I think about all this. Tell me what you think about all this. Are you surprised that Xbox is closing the gap between the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X? How many units did Xbox sell to close this gap the last 4 months? What was the reason why Microsoft was able to sell so many consoles? Was it the Series S sales? And why isn't Sony able to get more units out on the markets like Xbox is? Could we see the gap close even further? Go down below and let me know. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please hit that subscribe button and that like button to support us out the channel more than you know. And give me a follow on Twitter at Zalker87. I'm always on there talking games and sharing my latest videos. Plus, I love interacting with everyone there, so get on Twitter and let's talk about gaming. Also, follow me on Xbox Live. My gamertag is Zalker87, just like my channel name. See what games I'm playing, and let's compete in achievements for the month. So right now, I'm pretty sure you can guess it. I've been playing Elden Ring like crazy. I can't get enough of the game. I'm exploring every single crevice of that thing. I'm going into dungeons. I'm taking out minor dungeons, legacy dungeons. I just finished the capital, which took me about 16 hours. That place is massive. There's so much to this game that it's a little overwhelming, and I love every minute of it. I can't wait to get new armor, new chest pieces, new weapons, and just upgrade them and go out and try different kinds of combat. It's just so fun. I really recommend everybody get that game and try it out, because it truly is one of the biggest, if not the biggest single player game I've ever played in my life, and the world is just massive with so much variety in combat, so much variety in enemy types, and the boss fights are just so much fun. Yeah, it starts repeating later on down the line, but that's almost like 90 hours in when it starts repeating unit types and stuff like that, but they all have different variants. So I really recommend everybody go check that game out, because it's probably going to win Game of the Year unless Starfield has something to say with it, or maybe even God of War Ragnarok. But so far, I don't see anybody beating this game, because it's truly a masterpiece. But let me know what you're playing. Are you on your Xbox, your PlayStation, or are you on your PC playing something? Let me know down below, because that's what we're here for, so talk games. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching, and until next time, remember, enjoy your gaming. Later.